Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup.
All right, guys, on today's episode, Talent Stacker. What's in your talent stack? Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is ChooseFI. All right, guys, excited to hop into it today, kind of share with you something that I've been working on the side. But really, if I say that I'm working on it, it's only because I was so inspired by the content that we were discovering, Brad and I were discovering over the last 4 years, and just seeing kind of the way the world actually works that they don't teach you in school. And I know many of you, if you've listened to this show for any period of time, are familiar with us talking about through the lens of personal finance, but you realize you don't know what you don't know until it smacks you in the face. And I think it's exciting to wake up every day and realize there's so much more to this game of life. So to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. And yeah, this is cool. You've been working like mad for the last couple months. And I have to say, this is the first time I've seen you maybe without bags under your eyes for a couple of weeks. It looks like you've rested, rejuvenated, relaxed. And yeah, this is cool. So I guess, long story short, tell everybody what's been going on.
Thank you. What skin product are you using, Jonathan? No, I just shaved it.
No, the cool thing, in front, not to cut you off completely, but you have been so excited about what you've been working on. So I am mostly joking about the bags under your eyes, but man, you have been working it 16 hours a day. So yeah, it's been impressive to watch.
I think that what you just said is actually really interesting to point out, because I wouldn't choose to do less. I think some people think that like pursuing financial independence is just, how can I do less? And it's really not. What it is alignment. Like if you're going to lean 120% into something, 200% into something, let's make it something that we're passionate about, something that we're interested in, something that actually lights us up. Are you making a living or making a dime? Like, let's just start there. I think reframing this through the lens of financial independence, through the lens of what this community is always talking about, autonomy, mastery, purpose. ChooseFI, working on ChooseFI with you has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. And it gave me the opportunity not just to look at my own personal finances and do better in my personal finances, but make me realize like I actually love to learn and I love to work and I love to work hard. I just am not going to work hard on anything just because it's what brings in my paycheck necessarily. I'm going to first align, my interest with my passion, with autonomy, mastery, purpose. And then, I'll work twice as hard. If I work 40 hours a week for the man, I'll work 120 for myself as long as it meets that prior criteria.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's interesting. Love to learn and to work hard. And I wonder like when that realization came to you. Like, is that something that you've ever seen flickers of in your life before? Or was it more just kind of checking boxes?
I've never done it with an eagerness before. I did it out of a sense of fear, a sense of dread, a sense of, will I pass the test? Do I need to do multiple all-nighters? Like it was all from a place of fear in the past. Like, what are the consequences if I don't get this done? What are the repercussions if I'm not at this level or I don't meet my boss's performance, whatever, there were all of I've never been in a place where I looked at it and said, I am working an insane number of hours because I am excited about what the finish line is going to look like. There's no one else that's giving me a pat on the back for this. There's no one, it's just me, and that's a level. And I think when you start talking about these ideas and maybe you can kind of define them a little bit for our audience, it draws on some episodes we've done in the past, autonomy, mastery, purpose. When there's alignment there, I really do want to lean in. And it's pretty cool. This is the first time in my life that I can say all of that is happening at the same exact time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to quell any fears from our listeners, the way that you said like, oh, it's been such a privilege to do ChooseFI with you. Don't worry, Jonathan's not leaving the show. That's not the punchline here at all. This is just something he's doing under the umbrella of what we're doing here at ChooseFI. So please, there's no punchline coming. But something you also said in there, Jonathan, was maybe one of the thoughts or possibly caricatures of the financial independence movement is it's all about doing less. It's all about retiring to sit on a beach somewhere, right? Like you hear a lot, like they're trying to step away from jobs. And I think, at least in my opinion, I know in your opinion as well, like that is a caricature. That's not what we've seen in real life. We've not seen, I can't think of one single person who has reached FI and has just kind of done nothing. It's all about now you have time to move toward things that you actually want to do with your life. What a novel concept, right? Like, you mean we get 90 years on this planet and we can actually spend 60 of them or more, potentially plus or minus, doing what we want to do? Like, isn't that crazy that is a novel concept that is completely unreachable for most people who aren't in the FI movement? But yet, right? But yet, so many of us realize, okay, this is not a get rich quick scheme. This is an intermediate path timeline to financial independence. And from then on, you get to do what you want. The power shifts to you. And Jonathan, I mean, that's what's been so cool is like you, and this is really important that everybody knows this, you are not at FI, right? There is no question about that. You have not reached this mythical financial independence figure, but you have all the benefits of FI far earlier than that. And you personally have put that into play maybe more than anybody I know of. So yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And we can't say that enough. It's so important. I know it's almost become like a cliche on our show, like it's not binary, it's not 0 or 1, FI or not FI, but everybody in the audience, you need to hear this. It truly isn't. The benefits of financial independence start accruing from day one. They start accruing from that first little change you make, that first time that you get up off the couch and take action and do something to make your life better. And then when you start stringing 50, 100, 200 of those little things together, it turns into something magical. And that, again, is far before you reach this mythical figure.
I love that. It's funny. It's been a couple of years now, so we're a couple of years separated from it. But probably about a year into our ChooseFI journey, we were given the opportunity to go speak at Chautauqua with Jael Collins and Alan Donegan. And I remember we were putting our presentation together, and we were having a little bit of a conversation about it's not binary. But one of the slides in the presentation, I'm just kind of talking about it through the lens of imposter syndrome. And I said, "All right, guys, let's have a real conversation, a real talk. I have the lowest net worth in this room right now. Right? Let's start there. You're all here. Get some guidance. This is a relatively expensive trip, as far as things go. You're overseas, you're taking time out, you're, kind of questioning what's my next step. Some of you feel like you've hit a fork in the road and you're looking for some guidance on this. And, some of you are maybe saying, I feel like I still have so far to go and it's so far away. And, and there were various things that people were kind of coming there with. But I said, let's pause on this. You're looking to me, and I'm giving you this talk right now, and it's I arguably have the lowest net worth in this room right now. How many of you are like waiting to reach financial independence before you start building the life you really want right now? And you're like, oh, well, it's just another 6 or 7 years, or it's just another 3 or 4 years, and then I'm going to do it. And that could be okay if some other boxes are ticked, like we have autonomy, mastery, purpose. We love exactly where we're at. Our life is like great. And we're just let's do this. But there's others of you that are saying, I hate everything that's going on right now. And I met this Chautauqua basically because I just am trying to keep my head in the sand and somehow just stick it out for another 3, 4, 5 years. And then I'll be there, and if that's the case, like we fondly or not so affectionately call that the ostrich strategy, just put your head in the sand, wait till it's all over. And like, you can do that. And certainly people do, but like your time is your most precious non-renewable resource. It's the only thing you can't get back. You can't make more of. So for us just to check off 5 years, which is a significant percentage of our life, 10 years, a really significant percentage of our life, because we don't want to look around and see what other options are. And we couldn't possibly, create an alternative for ourselves. We're able to get more joy, more autonomy, more mastery, more purpose, and still reach our FI goals is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. And I'm now saying this, I'm not just saying it, but I'm like, I'm living this out. And yes, you're like, well, you're living it out through the lens of someone that's doing the ChooseFI podcast. No, I'm living it out 8 ways through Sunday. I've literally done it. Because now I was able to create a little bit of space, which, by the way, if you're on the path to financial independence, you immediately are starting to create the space. As soon as I realized I'm starting to create the space, I paid off my student loan debt, I have a couple years of savings, I started flexing that power immediately. And for a little bit of time, Brad, like, how you're just so burnt out from the academic system. I went to pharmacy school. So part of the reason I'm not at financial independence right now is because I went and got a doctorate and I took out 6 figures of student loan debt. and then I had to pay it all back. The thing that's actually the only probably reason I'm not at financial independence right now is because I followed what society said is the best path to wealth. That's what society said. And I'm just telling you, that was a giant roadblock. Now, don't get me wrong, my pharmacist friends, like, you took out the debt, you've got a great shovel, assuming you're still enjoying your career, then, you pay off your student loan debt. There's a clear path there. I had that path mapped out as well. But with what I'm about to share with you right now, a lot of which were lessons gleaned by the episodes that we had done on ChooseFI and with our community, I realized, like, not only did I realize for myself personally, but now I think we want to share with you, you don't just have to ride it out. Just because you committed to a doctorate and you committed to 6 figures of student loan debt doesn't mean that you have to live the next 30 years out subject to that one choice you made in high school and college. If you find your ladder's on the wrong wall, let's quickly reassess what our other options are. That in my mind, that's the heart of Talent Stacker. And that's when, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a second here, but if we establish that our ladder is on the wrong wall, yes, ChooseFI generally is the life optimization strategy. We talk about the math to get to financial independence. Each week, we share stories, strategies, tactics of people in different walks of life with different obstacles, how they got to financial independence. But my heart was like, what am I actually doing? I realized that I was that person, right? High school, college, pharmacy school, that's 12 years there, undergrad, pharmacy school, graduate, and then 4 years to pay off my student loan debt. That's 12 years with my ladder against the wall. At the end of that 12-year period, I can barely tolerate my job. 12 years, barely tolerate it. And what 98% of the population does is they just keep, especially at that point, with 12 years of commitment, they keep their head down and they grind it out for another 20 years. It's too much commitment. It's too hard to walk away. Just grind it out for another 20 years. But in our little play yard, I guess you could call it, our little like subculture that we have here, this financial independence community, this awesome, inspiring financial independence community, you saw people pivoting all the time. They weren't waiting for someone to give them permission. They weren't waiting for school to give them another degree. They weren't going back and taking another 4 years so they take another step. No. When you get a little space and you understand how the game is actually played, the rules of getting a great career, something that gives you autonomy, mastery, purpose, when you understand that there's other people that aren't saying, hey, 4 years later, I'll get my communications degree and I'll try again. That doesn't have to happen. In fact, I could retrain into 6 months into something making 60 to 80K with a clear path to making 150. Like, you could have a mulligan anytime you want it. And I was like, we need to spend more time on this content because I'm personally living this. And I know a bunch of other people that are doing it as well. There needs to be a focus on this. It's that important.
Yeah, and Jonathan, it's important to point out that yours is but one example, right? You talked about obviously 12 years of education, hundreds of thousands of dollars of money spent, 168,000 of student loan, but obstacles, you use that word. And I think so many of us have overcome obstacles in our own lives, right? Big or small. And I think this is really important. This is not a movement of people who have had it easy, right? Who have just sailed through life, found this at 17, right? So like in my own little way, I've talked about the catastrophic real estate speculation that I did that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, but yet I still reached FI. We've had people like Deanna come on and talk about drug addiction. We've had people grow up in poverty, people who went through divorce. Like, it is about being able to overcome. I think that's one of the most hopeful messages of the entire FI movement is that no matter what has happened, whether it's a sunk cost of 12 years of education or all those things I just mentioned, you can always move forward and make your life better. There's lifelong learning, right? It's passion-led learning. And I think that is just such a wonderful thing. Think about how few people in adult lives, if you will, learn anything new, right? Or try to master anything. You've mentioned a couple of times now, autonomy, mastery, purpose. How many people do you know that try to master anything once they've gotten beyond maybe sports in high school or something like that? Like, I can't think of anybody really. And what's cool is seeing people in the financial independence community who realize there's just so much more to life. And it could be about making money or building a business or whatever it may be, or it could be something intensely personal. And, again, that to me is it's just a wonderful way to live. And we talk about all the benefits of this life optimization strategy. And all of it does start from that umbrella of financial security, obviously. I think that gives us the space. But man, it's so much more than just money. It is so much more than money. And I don't think people focus on this mastery aspect and the learning new things and the exploring as much as we probably should.
So with that, let's get to it, right? No more dancing around the bush. If you've listened to this show for any period of time, you have heard us talk about building our talent stack. That phrase coined from Scott Adams in his book, How to Fail at Nearly Everything and Still Win Big. You can check me in the name. It's very close to that. I didn't have it pulled up in front of me, but that's basically it. It's basically a sidewise story of his life. He just kind of observed what happened and pointed out the patterns. And what is embedded in that is we don't need to be in the top 1% of anything. If we can just be better than average at a bunch of different things, maybe top 20%, which really isn't hard. If you just like lean into something and focus on it for a period of a week or two, maybe a month, especially if you're using the framework that I'm about to describe to you, if you can stack a few of these together, you become incredibly valuable. And while you may not be in the top 1% of anything, the aggregate of this stack, this talent stack that you've put together will open up opportunities that honestly, it's hard for you to even imagine right now. Now, Brad honestly was the one that introduced me to Scott Adams in that book. I adopted that as basically my life's motto. Like, I'm never going to be world-class. I'm not world-class. And maybe now after 400 episodes, I'm becoming or am world-class at podcasting at the, just at this end. But in terms of, and that's just doing, right? No one's great when they start. That's just doing, that's developing it over time. But in any other aspect of my life, I could see how I could get to better than average really quickly, really, really quickly. And so I would find what's that minimum viable? What's that better than average spot? And then I'd start stacking that on the next bit and the next bit. So I had a point of inspiration for that was, what if I could just carve out a little something where I could just talk about that? What does that high value, high ROI talent stack actually look like? So if we say that the college has had all this time to churn out students with degrees, but those students are ill prepared for a world that wants to know, what have you done and what can you do for us? And all you're saying is, well, I have this degree and a lot of student loan debt. Please give me a chance. There's a disconnect there. So what if instead we said, well, the way the world really works is, what have you done? What can you do for us? And you could actually point to a body of work. It's going to be so easy to command whatever paycheck you want if you can actually do the work. I was like, what would it look like to, just like ChooseFI, highlighting the best strategies, for reaching financial independence? What would it look like just to spend all of our time focusing on these high ROI skills? So I'm not going to go find a college and give you a list of their classes and say, this degree, looks like pretty no, they've got, the academic system has that figured out. And there's millions of students every year that are going through that system, and they're getting, the results that you might expect as borne out. What if instead of that, we said, all right, that's fine, but we know how this game is played, and we can start connecting the threads, and we're going to build our own talent stack. Because if you say, instead of focusing on a degree, which might be very, very expensive, I'm going to focus on being able to take to employer, what can I do as borne out by maybe a body of work, what have you actually done? Or a body of work like, here are their certificates, and here's what these certificates say I can do. That is so inexpensive, and it's so high ROI. If we can aggregate a list of skills, all of them pay above median income. So anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000 a year. This is like the sort of income level that we're talking about. That's not an exaggeration. If we can, you can retrain or reskill into these in a period of like 6 months to a year, and at a cost on the very high end of less than $10,000. Like, that's a completely different conversation. Nobody's talking about that. There's not really a central platform. Mike Rowe is the closest, and he does a really good job, but he talks about it through the lens of dirty jobs. These are trade jobs. These are blue collar jobs, and they're amazing. They're out there. He's doing a fantastic job. If you're interested in a trade job and you're interested in that industry, like, there's no one better to highlight those than Mike Rowe. But it used to be, it's just like these white collar jobs that require college and these blue collar jobs that you go to trade school. And now in 2020, 2021, it's not like that. It's like there's a very few jobs that require college, actually require college, like doctor, lawyer, et cetera. And then there's 90+% of the jobs that need you to be able to do the work. They're white collar jobs. They pay great income. They need that you be able to show that you can actually do the work. And a lot of them are leaning on certificate programs. And you can make, again, $60, $80, $120, $160,000 a year. I know people in our community that have actually done this. We should probably find out what they're doing, because all of us are freaking out about our kids getting the highest SAT score and our kids like doing AP classes and dual enrollment and getting letters of reference and applying for scholarships. And you could just bypass all that. Like, this is what I would do if I were starting over, knowing what I know now, knowing about what my interests are and how I could put my talent stack together. This is what I would do. And I would be in a job making 6 figures within 2 years, easy, and no student loan debt, and a very clear path to what my direction is forward. Let's spend some more time talking about it. Let's have this conversation, Brad. So, okay, sorry. I started a podcast.
Another podcast.
Yeah, I started another podcast. It's called the Talent Stacker Podcast. And it's not for everybody. If you're dead set on college, it's not going to help you go to college for less, right? It's not for everybody. But if you're already cynical on the ROI proposition there and you agree, you're like, that actually at its core, that sounds fundamentally true. Let's see how far he takes this and what he can prove out. Then come with me on this ride. You know, you're listening to a podcast, go look for it on your podcast player of choice. And we are it's not going to be an episode every week, but you're going to want to subscribe because you're going to want to get that hit. And basically it's for those of you that are looking around to say, what else is out there? I'm unhappy with the choices I made and what the outcome has been right now. And I don't want to go get another 4-year degree so I can get a second chance. Like I need to be quickly moving to this next chapter of my life. I could commit 6 months, 8 months, but like at that point, I need to be moving this ship forward. Like, yeah, let's do that. Talent Stacker.
To me, it's about increasing that zone of awareness, right? It's a different path. It's different options. I think that's where what we've tried to do here at ChooseFI for nearly 4 years is just give people different options. And we talked, obviously, you mentioned college a couple of times about a chance to bypass, but obviously for people who are looking to go to college, we've spoken with Brian Eufinger a couple different times. We've spoken with Cody about different ways to get scholarships and apply in a smart manner. So like those are options, right? We've talked about ways to increase your salary at your regular job. We've had discussions with Chris Hutchins and with Tori Dunlap and financial mechanics. So we're trying to really dive into all these different options. And this to me is probably the most exciting because frankly, this didn't exist 20, 30 years ago, maybe even as recently as 5, 10 years ago. But there are ways to make significant amounts of money yearly in, like you said, in white collar jobs, if you will. I kind of hate that phrase, but that's what we're talking about here, by bypassing college. And again, it's just options. So what's cool is you are diving into this and you're saying, all right, I've seen a couple of these just from guests of ours. How do we dive into this? How do we provide actual information as opposed to just, oh, hey, tell us your story, how you did it. Well, here's a way to replicate it. And that's what you're diving deep into. It's not just, oh, I'm creating a podcast that I'm going to talk to people once a week and just kind of regurgitate this. It's, no, we're going to talk to somebody and we're going to help you recreate that step by step.
Yeah. And as I was putting it together, I started to like see the framework a little bit. Like it's not an accident that people, I think somebody will listen to this, well, maybe there's a one job that pays, $80,000 a year that doesn't require a degree, but like it could go away at a moment's notice. But with the framework that I would love to share with you guys, even in this conversation, I think you say, if you understand this, you can see how like, yeah, I'm just going to share with you 5 categories. But like, if you really understand each of those 5 categories has a nearly limitless number of options. And if you can tie a couple of them together, you see how far this idea, this framework can actually take you. So if you'll permit me, I'll share with you kind of, I think, the guiding light for the show over the next couple of years. And I'm not producing an episode every single week. It's kind of as I really have something to develop the framework out. So make sure you subscribe if that is something that you want to follow. But with these 5, maybe 6 categories, the first category is like the most obvious. It's what everybody thinks of. It's a time for money role. It's a service role. So if like for me in pharmacy, it was, practicing pharmacy, I get paid something like $50 an hour to do X, Y, and Z. If it's a trade like irrigation, you have someone come out and they have some sort of hourly rate that they charge you for the service. And in fact, most of us fall into one of these categories. But I think the underpinning of that is that when you look at it through the lens of what does a business need? We think about the S&P 500. These are real companies. You think about the thousands and thousands, maybe millions of companies that are out there. All of them need what I'm about to describe to you next. And so if all of them need that, and you have the skills that can provide that, they care about that way more than the actual college degree, right? So here are the categories that I came up with. The first one is, well, it's sales, right? Now, this isn't sales like you necessarily on a phone trying to convince somebody to do something, but we have a current customer base and audience awareness base. How do we enable more of them to make the decision to purchase? It could be a conversation. It could be what you do on the webpage through conversion. It could be, it could be an in-person thing. It could be a thing that's done at the website level, but we need to increase sales. The second category, or I guess so we had time for service category one, or I'm sorry, we had time for money category one. We had the second category, which is increasing sales. This could also, the third category would be marketing. So how do we actually expand our current audience base? So we have this current audience base of 100 people. How do we get to 200 people, 300 people, 1,000, 1 million people, that sort of thing? What's interesting is when I look at, we'll come back to that in a second. The next category, so category 4, would be team development or leadership. So we have this current team that's executing on these processes, these systems, but there's so much more that could be done. It's so inefficient right now. What would it look like to bring this entire team together to focus on these target goals and develop them? We all talk about how it's way less expensive to develop your current team than it is to hire a new team. So if you can be that person that helps your employer, your business, develop the current team, help them focus on goals and get the results, that is a massively valuable skill set. Category 5 is systems, process, and workflow. So while the first one is probably the human element, getting teams to work towards something, the next one is, what are the underpinnings that allow the team to actually work more efficiently or allow you to execute on your goals more efficiently? There's some overlap between all of these. In reality, this is like a Venn diagram, and that's actually the point. We could break these down into subcategories, but if you can do a little bit of several of these or many of these, and you can document what you've actually done, then you become what we kind of in a fun way called a rainmaker. It's just, you can do it all. What are you focusing on right now? And what's interesting about that, Brad, is for us, the thing that made me so aware of this was actually building the ChooseFI podcast. I think over the last 4 years, in some ways, I kind of joked about this on the Talent Stacker show, I've become, in my own mind, my wife doesn't allow me to ever use this term, I become a rainmaker. In my own mind, like I can do all of these things to some varying degree. I'm not world class at them, but if you think about it through the podcasting is communication. Podcasting is selling a vision. We're selling a vision of financial independence. This is doable. And if you listen to us over a period of time, it's sales. See, sales doesn't have to be spammy. Sales just helps you to see how much better taking this action is for your future, right? Podcasting, because I believed it. First and foremost, that was the premise. I actually believed that someone that started taking the steps to financial independence, their life would be better. And that was borne out by all the people that were taking us up on the advice that we were offering and then sharing the benefits in their own life. That actually, for me, reclaimed sales. Sales always felt like something that was very spammy or sketchy. It was when I saw that like this information is valuable. It needs someone to sell it, and not sell it for money even, just sell it, like do it, take action. And then they were doing it and they were sharing, wow, look how much better our life is. I was like, sales is incredibly important. It's an incredibly important skill set. Marketing, let me tell you what. Marketing is putting a packaging on something that makes other people recognize the actual value of it. And when we started a podcast, and you could put a lot of marketing into a podcast. You put a very small amount of marketing. You can tell the difference, though, right? There's a million different ways that marketing actually happens. This could be graphic design. This could actually be production elements on your podcast. Like, it depends on the business that you're talking about here. But marketing is very important. And marketing, in some degree, is tied to sales. And as you start working through these with the podcast, as we went from like me and you talking out of like our respective living rooms or my living room at the time, we started going to a small team and we had a team working with us. Leadership, especially in a virtual world where everybody's off siloed in their own direction, your ability to kind of help a team work towards a common goal, that's critical. it's not something you're ever done with, but if you can actually point to what you've actually done and goals that you work towards, and then systems, process, and workflow. Brad, think of all the tiny things that we were doing every single week, and then we realized that there was a system that we could put in place for that, so we didn't have to do it each time. And by having something that we could troubleshoot, yes, we were selfishly doing it for ourselves, but along the way, we were adding it to our talent stack.
Yeah, Jonathan, you're absolutely right. And I think the one that jumps out to me there in just the last 5 minutes you were chatting was the sales being not spammy, right? I think this is so important. So many of us get bogged down in that limiting belief. And I mean, here at ChooseFI, this is a podcast, right? We're not selling anything to you by listening to this podcast. What we are trying to do is to compel you to take action, right? So when you reframe it as something selling, as something really positive, that's the message we're trying to get across. And I think what's cool is, as a business owner, or really as an employee in essence, like, we're all doing this in some way. So that's why when you're talking about this talent stack, it's not just limited. This is certainly not just limited to business owners, right? This is everyone, and it's a mindset, right? And I think we all see this in our lives, and it's cool when you have that kind of systems thinking of, hey, what am I going to learn today? It's again a very empowering thought of, what am I going to learn today that is going to make me a better person? And then when you have that extra knowledge, that extra skill, you can put it together with all these other things that you've learned in rather unusual ways. And I think that's ultimately the originating message of the talent stack is, again, like you said, you don't have to be world-class at anything, but when you put together these various skills, you never know what they're going to kind of synthesize into, right? Like, what you're going to take from them and make connections in ways that maybe, just maybe, you are the only person on earth that has that array of skills and could make that one connection that leads to X. And I don't know what that X is going to be in your life. But again, like, going back to my own story and the talent stack, I was probably one of the few humans on earth who was top 10%, let's say, with using travel rewards points, having created a website that was reasonably successful. That was certainly not top 10%, but it was, it was reasonably successful. And that was a CPA, right? So I took those three things and put them together into something that became a free travel rewards coaching service. Because again, I put my business building hat on with my own CPA's hat and said, oh, I can turn this into something because I can offer my time for free, and then people could use my affiliate links to sign up for credit cards, and I can turn this into a business that's a win-win-win for everybody. And again, that is just a random example, but one of thousands and thousands of examples of people putting a talent stack together. But Jonathan, there's a reasonable chance that I'm the only person on earth that had that set of skills and could have made that connection and turned that into a tiny little business at Richmond Savers that turned into a slightly larger business at Travel Miles 101, which turned into meeting you and creating ChooseFI, which has kind of in our own way made a dent in this world. And like, that's the direct line from that random talent stack to a germ of an idea to slightly more success to ChooseFI. And I mean, that is the talent stack at work in my own life.
Yeah. I mean, let's all do this. So we'll go through this kind of exercise together. So when we met and I kind of pitched you on this idea, like how to start a podcast, I had to go Google it afterwards, how to start a podcast, right? And that Google search led to many other searches. But then some people's like, well, I don't have any experience doing this. I'm not sure if I could do it. Well, nobody has any experience doing it before they do it. At some point, you have to get started. That's how you learn by doing. So do it and be bad at it when no one's listening or watching. So going from that first Google search, I learned how to do podcast production. And then slowly over time, how to tell better stories through the art of podcasting. Then along the way, we started stacking these skills. So if podcasting is communication at the higher end, then now the underpinnings of the business below that. So how does affiliate marketing work? How does email automation work? And then from, additionally a marketing perspective, video production. adding those elements and layering that on, and then a little bit of web design on top of that, like that next skill. And I'm just kind of, I'm not great at it, but I'm building it out and I'm getting better each time as I start becoming more aware of the tools and the best practices and the underpinnings of all of this. And then as it goes, farther on, you keep adding these different bits that are touching. We have a small team. And so we're running a small team and we're saying, all right, well, things are, going off the rails sometimes. Like, what could we do to ensure that we're all working towards the same goal? What would we do differently? And you work through all of that. And now you're looking at your systems and your process and your workflow. And you're saying, things are very complicated. I feel like we're spending a lot of time on task that there's got to be a better way. And you're looking to implement those. And then over time, you're building this really long aggregate of skills. And it basically makes each additional project that you take on a little bit easier, because now you're just looking at how do I create the project with the skills that I now possess. You're not having to go back and say, what skills do I need to build? But you can't bypass that first part because they're not teaching you this stuff in college. Every college grad, I don't care how much debt you had, is still faced with the same Google search at the beginning of whatever skill they need to build. And so if you understand, you just say, well, this is ultimately what I'm going to have to know. Why don't I just start here? You can take that to an employer, and it's amazing. So MK, welcome to the conversation. What have you thought so far? I mean, does this kind of sync up with your own philosophy on skill building in life? Has this been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I think about just what I did in my corporate career, absolutely. I mean, I had to build these skills. And what I realized is I was the most successful because I went out and I said, oh, it would be probably really convenient if I knew basic HTML for the emails that I have to build for this company. So I just went and learned it. Nobody told me to do that. And taking that initiative obviously helped me to climb the ranks, do really well. I know I talked before, I felt like I had golden handcuffs when I decided to pull the plug and then launch my own business, which had been slowly growing on the side. So yes, this lifelong learning, wanting to be a learner. And I think a lot of people in the FI community identify this way. So whether it is at your career or the business you want to build, we want to learn all the different strategies for FI, right? We're interested in learning. We're reading the blogs, we're reading books, we're listening to podcasts. That's probably going to translate really well into then saying, hey, how can I make my life better? Whether it's at work to earn more, whether it's in a business to earn more, or just to make my life more efficient, my life run smoother and better. And that's really playing out for me right now. As many of you know, I have a huge life change coming up. Feels like I'm about to walk into a black hole. I have no idea what my time's going to look like. And so I really had to think for my business in the past couple of months, well, how can I streamline things more? How can I get just as much done or more done where I don't have to have, myself seated in front of the computer? How can I automate more? How can I get more efficient with what I'm doing to be able to continue to have my passive income stream growing? And I know we talked earlier this year with Joanna Penn, who's one of my independent author idols, and she was saying, books aren't really that passive of an income stream, right? Like you write the book, but you still have to market it, you still have to promote it, and you guys know this from the ChooseFI book. Like there's always more you want to be promoting and putting out there. People forget quickly. And so for me, my thought was, okay, well, how can I still promote my books, but not promote my books? How can I still drive people to, my YouTube channel and finally monetize that and say, okay, this is an asset. How can I do this? So I've really had to get serious about these different elements that you've been laying out, Jonathan, of, okay, I'm my own employer. How can I do better? So that way, November, December comes, I can just truly live the life I want, which is to spend time with this baby and to get a handle on things and figure it out and go from there. And I think that's one of the benefits of FI is knowing that this framework works. I've seen it work before, that continual improvement, and that I kind of have the freedom to make those decisions and those choices. So I'm living this right now.
Parenthood, by the way. For context for people, what's coming for
yes.
you?
the big life change.
Yes.
You have your first child due imminently, which is so exciting.
Yes. So my time that I used to just spend researching different things, or, well, it was okay that I took all this time to manually do X, Y, and Z for my business. I'm not going to have time for that anymore. Got to automate it, got to figure out a way to be more efficient. And to the point you mentioned earlier, it's not just cutting costs. My costs are pretty lean for my business, but my time cost is pretty expensive. The value of my time is about to go up exponentially because I will value my free time more with my child and my family versus business. So that is trying to cut the time cost.
That's awesome. As you were saying that, I was thinking there's all these different subcategories. I'm just thinking about through the lens of the needs of the business. One of them is how do you hire and vet rock star talent? What does that process look like? Every business owner, this is a fear for them. If I bring someone new into, this enterprise, is this going to be a person that can move us forward? If you can kind of understand the mindset of what they're looking for, not only can you cultivate the skills they need, but you can also get any job you want. That's one way of doing it. And then the other thing that I wanted to add on to this, I didn't know exactly where it would fit, is can you teach? If you can't teach, but it doesn't even have to be an either or. It can be, can you do and teach? Can you cultivate the skill of teaching what you know? Look, we are going through the decentralization of education in a way that it's going to be hard for you to process. We'll look back and we'll understand it. But if we understand that very concrete, specific skills in aggregate are incredibly valuable, then your ability to teach something is priceless. So if you're a teacher out there and you don't feel like you're being valued at what it is that you're bringing to the table, just recognize that your pay does not represent your actual value, the actual skill set that you have of teaching something, taking a concept that no one knows anything about, and at the end of them having the confidence to walk away with that when paired with one or two of these ideas is literally set your own wage, set your own income. I mean, it's hard to put a number on that. So I think that we could spend time with it, maybe send us your questions, tell us what your talent stack is. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? I think that's the entire point. This isn't a secret. I'm very happy to be proven wrong. I just don't think you can. So if there's a question about what would it look like in this situation, that's the entire point. The entire point is that we need to have these conversations. The entire past strategy is let's not talk about this. Yes, let's not talk about the fact that really once you get the job, that's when your real education starts. It wasn't college. College just proves to the employer that you know how to learn. Once you get out in the real world, then you're going to learn what you really need to know. But let's not think about that and the economics of that too closely. All right. I'm not releasing episodes every single week on the Talent Stacker side. It's actually just kind of going as we have something to hit, a new idea, a new way of fleshing out this framework. I think it's a slow burn. Some of us need some time to just get comfortable with this idea. And the idea is that when you come over there, you're saying, I'm looking to retrain, reskill. I'm willing to invest some money into something, but I want it to be a very high ROI and a very concrete timeline in mind. And one of our first episodes we did with Bradley Rice. You guys know we had him on the show. It was an amazing episode. We talked about how his job enabled him to go to part-time and make more and reach financial independence faster, but it was through the lens of financial independence. It was kind of one of those, wait, there's probably something here. What are you actually doing? Is that replicable? And so I worked with Bradley to create a actual career development program so you can replicate exactly what he did. And for context, if you were to listen to that episode and take action on that and go through that process, you quite literally, in 6 months from now, could be making $60,000 to $80,000 a year with remote work options. How incredible is that? And even during a pandemic where jobs are scarce, the demand for this is unbelievable. That's how you'll have recruiters begging you to come work for them if you can do this. And it's not coding. It works with computers. It's with a CRM, which basically, if you actually look at the framework for what we just described, it encompasses a lot of what we just described, which is why it's so valuable. But within 6 to 8 months, you can be making 60 to 80K, and you could have a clear path, not hyperbole, to 200K over the next, 3 to 5 years. That's reality, mapped out time and time again. They show you exactly what that process looks like. So I think if you think about it, Brett, isn't that one of the other quote unquote objections that sometimes we hear, the straw men, I can't do financial independence, or financial independence is only for those that are making an above median income, which I disagree with, but you could just, if you pick up this piece, you can make whatever income you want.
Right. Yeah. Just start earning more money, right? Make moves. And it's of course, it's not that simple to just start, but it is not impossible within 3, 6, 9, 12 months, right? To completely transform. And that's one of the beautiful things of the FI community. And what we said from the very beginning, Jonathan, which is this is not about me and you. If ChooseFI was down to the limits of our knowledge, this would have crashed and burned a long time ago. It's how do you crowdsource? How do you have this rising tide lifts all boats of, hey, out of millions of people across the world, we've figured some things out, right? And it helps you cut through the noise. And this is but one example, but it's a wonderful one, right? With this Salesforce that Bradley Rice talked about in episode 117, and now you highlight in depth with him at Talent Stacker. Like that is one example that I remember when we had that episode, we had multiple people email us and say, wow, how do I learn more about this? Like this sounds like something I could actually do. When you find those stories, when you find those little nuggets, you want to dive into them. People want more. And that's what's cool to me personally as a listener of Talent Stacker is that you can do that. So I've seen you do that with Bradley. I've seen, you talk about your talent stack, right? Is you've become a world-class podcaster of independent podcasters. You almost inarguably are in the top 10. And, I probably would argue significantly higher. So what did you do? You took those knowledge and skills and you created a podcast course, right? I mean, that's something that you are uniquely talented. You were a pharmacist 4 years ago. I don't think people really understand this. You were a retail pharmacist that anybody could have walked into the big box store and seen just dispensing drugs, right? And now you are one of the best podcasters in the entire world. So if you can create a course that, hey, I was a regular person, quote unquote, I say that jokingly, right? But like, you're obviously still
a
very much
rainmaker, still a very regular person.
Yes. Don't tell Danny that you call yourself a rainmaker. Please don't listen.
Like, did you really just do it again, dude? Sorry. I'm gonna let it go, I promise.
But no, seriously, right? Like you had no knowledge of podcasting and now you're one of the best in the world. Like you almost felt this calling to help teach that to people, right? If for the small percentage of our audience who's interested in becoming a podcaster at some point, that course can be extremely valuable. Again, it's these little things. Those are two examples because obviously you've just started this project. But what is that going to look like? What is talentstacker.com going to look like 2 years from now?
Yeah.
Are you going to have 5, 10, 20 of these that it's a smorgasbord then, right? Somebody shows up and says, I want to earn more. I want to change my life. I want to learn. Okay. Well, out of the millions of people in the financial independence community, we've been able to dig for those little gold nuggets and you've been able to explore them. And to me, that's really cool. And you did want to keep this separate from ChooseFI in the sense that this is clearly something you want to dive deep on, right? Dive extremely deep. And what we're doing here at ChooseFI is slightly different than that. We're presenting information. We're trying to compel you to take action. But man, once you've found that action you want to take, this is a great outlet for it.
I think you're right. Yeah, I was trying to be very respectful of who our ChooseFI audience is and why they're listening to ChooseFI. So on ChooseFI, I think you're right. You're using the right term there. You need to pursue financial independence. It shouldn't be optional. We're here to compel you, convince you, sell you that you need to do this. Minus the word sales, because this is for you. It's not about us. This is for the world will be a better place if more of us are pursuing financial independence. It basically comes down to that. At Talent Stacker, it's different. I want to see you develop these skills. And I'm not going out there creating, just free YouTube playlists that I'm trying to stitch them all together from the best playlist that I found. No, I'm trying to find very, very high quality courses that knowing what I know, being a business owner myself, I know that if you go through this and you can do this, your value becomes near priceless, right? And I'm trying to help you see the patterns so you can stitch enough of those together that you can do whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want. And so we've got a program in place with Bradley Rice I just described to you to get you retrained into a job making 60 to 80K. That one's live. Those of you know how passionate I am about podcasting, why I believe podcasting is the best option out there for people that are trying to increase connections, increase brand awareness, get their mission, their voice out into the universe, and honestly, build an incredible talent stack because you get a risk-free way of selfishly learning all these skills so you can use them on your own business. It was amazing. I mean, it's a talent stacking superhighway. And I love teaching this stuff. So I've actually built a Talent Stacker course, which I have some students going through right now, getting incredible results, where it's not actually available right now. But if that's something you're like, I've been waiting for Jonathan to announce that, there is a wait list available for that if you want to hear about it when it goes live. But that's basically it, guys. This Talent Stacker is a little place for those of you that say, I've got the saving bit down, or maybe I don't have the saving bit down because I need to retrain, rescale in a different area, and I want to go deeper onto this earn more side. This is here. And we're going to keep building this body of workout for you, just because it's fun. It's a fun conversation. We don't have to just focus on the frugality. Of course, we can focus on earning more and building autonomy, mastery, and purpose into our life along the way. All right, with that, let's go ahead and pivot and talk about our community for a second. MK, do we have some FI wins of the week here?
We sure do. We have wins every week, but this week we have two really great ones that we want to share. Both Karen and Emma wrote back to Brad's weekly newsletter and shared their wins. So this first one is from Karen. She says, "Hey, Brad, to your point of what have you splurged on recently and fun activities for less, my husband and I have really embraced the concept of finding what you truly value in life and putting your time, energy, and resources into those things. We are 3.5 years from FI and being able to retire and move away from an area of the country that we hate, Florida, to an area of the country that we love, Washington State. But we also wanted to make sure that we weren't waiting for someday to enjoy our lives. We spent some money and invested in some camping gear and have decided to enjoy our camping in Florida state parks and national forests while we still live here. Not only does it get us outside and unplugged from our daily grind, but it is also a way for us to have a lot of fun while not spending a lot of money, besides the initial startup equipment costs. Thanks for all that you and Jonathan do. We've learned so much."
Nice. That's really cool. I love that, Karen. And yeah, it's amazing every week to see people respond to the FI Weekly, my call for what's the action you've taken. And I really do read and reply to every single one of those messages. And yeah, this was a cool one because FI, like we've talked about here in this episode, it's not just about cutting. It can't just be that side of the equation. It has to be about learning more, earning more potentially, and living better, right? Exploring what you want out of life. And I just thought that this one from Karen was a perfect example.
Great. And our second winner this week is Emma. So Emma wrote in, she said, "I am 20 years old, and this week I started and fully funded my Roth IRA. I've always had good money habits, but I felt as though I couldn't start investing in retirement until I had a 401k through a job offer after I graduated. However, now my Roth IRA is fully funded in this year, and I will be ready to fully fund it through 2021 in January." Great job, Emma.
Yeah, this is great. If you can just get a few of these years stacked together, it just starts, it's that wealth snowball. That's what JD Roth described it as. So you always hear about the debt snowball. Let's flip that on its head. What would it look like to front load those Roths, front load those 401ks, and start seeing our wealth snowball?
Yeah, can you imagine? Emma is 20 years old. She just fully funded her Roth IRA for calendar year 2020. And she has the money just sitting there waiting for 2021, January 2021, to fully fund the Roth then. It's just, this is incredible. I mean, that is a wealth snowball in action. To be 20 years old and to have this information, and most importantly, to be taking action on it. So Emma, huge congrats.
If that's really, if that's happening, especially at the same time as minimal to no student loan debt, and you can just start getting that wealth snowball working for you in your early 20s, it starts feeling a lot like financial independence in your early 30s. It's, MK, I bet you that's actually basically your story when you look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we always say that the freedom that you experience with FI starts as soon as you start saving, as soon as you pay off that debt, but it really just continues to grow. When I look back at it, it doesn't seem like this all or nothing binary. It feels like we've been gradually walking up this big mountain and we've had great views all along the way. And we're like, oh, there's even better views ahead. Cool. So absolutely.
All right, my friends, if you want to participate in our FI Weekly, we've made it easy for you. We've put all of our resources in aggregate together for you in one accessible place. Just go to ChooseFI.com/start. Lots of goodies there. But the big thing is we send out the FI Weekly, a newsletter written every week by Brad, basically giving you something that he's working through, a tactic, a strategy, a challenge, and then asking you, what is your win of the week? Those participants, people on our email list, those that reply to that are entered in a drawing, and we give you one of the books from our publishing arm, And there's actually several options there, which are mentioned on that page. But, there's our book, ChooseFI, The Principles of Financial Independence. There's The Simple Startup, a workbook for entrepreneurs. There's a book on pensions by Grumpus Maximus, Worth It versus Worth It. And then there's Raising a Money Savvy Family for Financial Independence. And really talking about how do we foster these conversations with the next generation to make sure that we're raising kids that are on the path to financial independence, not waiting for the silver spoon. Just a fantastic set of options. So again, I would encourage you enter the drawing, but even more than that, join the community. Go to ChooseFI.com/start. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.